All right, thank you all for having me. As David said, this talk has been baking for like a year, so let's hope it's not too well done. All right, so my name's Andre. I'm a senior engineering manager over at Harry's. Lots of different roles in tech, like anything technology, math, science. I've got a crazy cat named Zuko. You can see him right there, and that's my wife, Nivea. And this last point is really why we're here, right? Like, I probably made some piece of technology explode at some point. We'll see how that works out as we go through, right? So that's really what I want to talk about here, right? Why? Oh, wait, I'm not really good. Oh, yeah. I really want to talk about that last part, right? Like, why is it important for us as technology leaders and technologists to really understand and explore the systems we operate, right? And by that, I mean like the core foundations and building blocks of our technology. Why is that important? What can we do to it? And I think it's even extremely more timely now given the state of our industry, right? There have been lots of changes, people are feeling uncertain, and you want to know, like, how can you make yourself more relevant, right? Another reason, you can see a tweet here from Kelsey, awesome human being, talking about hype cycles don't last when people understand how things work. And a quote I found on a blog from this gentleman, Lucas, talking about how foundational knowledge is worth 1,000 tools, right? This is all important because technology comes and goes, right? Change costs us churn, it costs time, it costs bugs, it costs outages, and lost opportunities, right? Knowing the underpinnings of your system helps you better understand what is worth your time and investment, right? Where do you focus? How do you spend your time? How do you develop yourself? How do you develop your staff, right? It also helps you understand build versus buy. What do you buy? What do you build? How do you contribute to like the overall tech ecosystem, right? Especially as technologists build versus buy, we've all been confronted with like not invented here syndrome. You want to build everything or you want to buy everything, and it's always a challenge on how you draw that line, right? I could tell you a story about a team that tried to build a file system on top of a object store and didn't understand why they were getting data corruption. And it all comes back down to just not having that fundamental understanding of technology and not being able or given the opportunity to explore that, right? Another reason, computers still need people, right? We're not at the point yet, I think, where they can create, program, and develop themselves, right? You know, as you can see from this other tweet by Kelsey, he's concerned or expressing some concern here because he's having a problem finding or seeing the next generation of people that really understand the low level, the next generation of tool builders, right? Who's building the next framework? Who's building the next abstraction? Who's building the next Kubernetes, right? Based on his observations, he doesn't see schools teaching these things, right? It's not a common boot camp subject. You know, boot camps, just out of necessity, focus on that higher level concepts, those higher level abstractions that you can get out there and become productive immediately. So we need to encourage those lower level skills and that lower level understanding of our systems. And we're all here because we are great technologists. We want to be better technologists. And for those of us that are leaders, we want to develop great technologists, right? We want to encourage that T-shaped engineer, right? Broad technical skill with depth in some specific areas that are important to you, right? This is very, very important as you develop as a technologist and as your career develops, right? It not only helps you, but it helps whatever product you're building, right? It helps your personal and your professional development. It helps your longevity, and it makes you a more adaptable and flexible engineer, which, as I mentioned, is even more important in this time of churn in our industry right now, right? You don't want to just be known for one thing or not seen as adaptable or flexible, right? And there's also a competitive advantage here, right? Not just for you as a as an employee or a job seeker, but also for the business and the product you work with or for, right? Like, you might start exploring your systems and you see something that sparks that next idea. You never know where the source of your next big idea come from. You might see something and start reading some documentation or like scanning some source code and you realize, oh wait, I can tweak this one flag and save 50% on some cloud provider bill or optimize your CPU usage, right? So like, where does all this come from and why is this important to me, right? I started off just your regular programmer, learning programming, writing hello world, poking at the computer, simple GUI apps. And then I got introduced to Unix and Linux. I'm like, what is this Unix thing? What is this Linux thing? This thing looks amazing. It's way better than Windows and DOS that I was running at the time. I want to get this running on my home computer, right? Like well, I won't date myself, but I'll say it's a 486. But, you know, it was like, what is this thing? This is amazing. There's like more to this computer. I have this whole world out here. So I decided I'm going to get this thing running on my home computer. And of course, I get it in, and my CD-ROM drive won't work. So now I'm like, I don't even know how to make the CD-ROM drive work, but just from exploring and reading what scant resources you could find at the time, somehow I realized it had something to do with like this thing called a device driver, and it was written in C. And I'm like, ooh, this is C. I know this. Oh my God, do I sound like the kid from Jurassic Park, right? I just realized that. But yeah, I'm like, all right, this is C. I know this. I had no business poking around in that device driver. And like, at that time, it took like 4 hours to get the kernel to compile on my machine, so I could do like maybe 2 compiles a day, right? And after like 2 days of hacking, I finally got my CD-ROM drive to work. And it was like, oh wow, this stuff is cool. Look what I can do, right? I can make my computer that didn't do a thing before do a new thing now, right? And that is the whole point of all of this for you, your staff, the people you lead is, all right, you know what you can do with the computer now, but what else can you do with the computer, right? It's more than selling your widget. Please buy the widgets we sell at Harry's. It's more than advertising, right? There's a lot more things that you can do with the computer. So like, fast forward to the future, right? How has that helped me, right? I have done very, very bad things with protocols that you don't want to see. I've helped teams, like I've helped teams optimize code just by saying, hey, you know, I think you're using this thing that has an optimized function to do a thing, and lo and behold, it's there. That just comes from my natural exploration, right? And that makes me want to encourage others and like give that sense of exploration and that fear, that the getting rid of the fear of exploration, just getting rid of that fear and then encouraging people to embrace that, right? I've also helped my own employers out, right? We were building systems and we needed a scalable authentication system for a weird mail product we were dealing with many years ago when people ran their own mail servers. And I was able to figure out a way to do like a centralized authentication by just hacking the authentication layer of the system, right? And that really helped us scale that system out, right? So there are many, many benefits to something like this. All right. So what do we consider low level when we say low level, right? What does that even mean, right? And I think the thing to realize here is it could mean whatever you want it to mean, right? It could be the hardware of your system. It could be the chips in your system. It could be some library or the internals of a framework that you use, right? We all use tons of libraries and frameworks and abstractions every day that are critical to your business and your products, right? It could even be how things fit together, right? Lots of us working systems where we just drop a bunch of code in and it works, right? Like, you can also take the opportunity there to understand how all these pieces fit together, right? It could also be like current or emerging foundational technology that you see, right? There are new languages coming out. It could be things like AI, ML. How does it really work and what is it doing, right? Is your company, your business going to start depending on something, right? Even if for your day-to-day job, you don't necessarily need to understand the inner workings of that system, right? You could take the opportunity to develop your own understanding of the internals of that system and then just put it in your back pocket for when that day comes and you need to pull it out. And I also want to acknowledge that people are another layer of your system that's worth exploring, right? People are important, but that's for a different time and another talk here at LeadDev. Just want to call that out too, that it doesn't only have to be on the technology front, right? Learning how people operate just as important because none of this stuff works without all of us here. All right. So how deep do you go into the system, right? There really are no rules, right? For us as leaders, it's an opportunity to learn about your staff, learn about the people you lead, right? Understand them. And for you as individual technologists, it's a way to learn about yourself, learn about your team members, right? What are they interested in? What are you interested in, right? And also, you could figure out where you want to go based on something that's important, either to you, the org, or maybe a skill you want to develop in yourself or your team, or something that interests you, right? So the field is open, right? It's technology, right? The goal here is exploration for development, fun, profit, whatever, making something blow up. Doesn't matter. All right. I know that for myself, I've had software and hardware excursions, right? Like, I have worked on the electronics of a product we were making. I am not an electronic engineer, and that did not make it to production in any way, shape, or form, so it's okay. However, I did unblock my team, right? My team was stuck. The hardware team was 2 states over. The software team was where I am, and we needed to make changes to the development hardware, and everybody was 2 thumbs with a soldering iron. I only had 1 thumb with the soldering iron, so I was like, I'll go in, I'll figure it out, I'll get it done. I followed the instructions, I unblocked my team. All right. And I've also worked on designing custom computer systems to control devices, right? So, you build a computer at home, right? This is no different. You just expand that skill out even more. And some of these skills go beyond these explorations go even just beyond working with like maybe a new piece of software, a new piece of hardware. In designing that custom computer system, I got to interact with vendors, learn more about the business, learn more about the profitability and how we plan to market and sell this thing, right? I got involved in manufacturing and learned a lot more to like expand my skill set, right? Make me a better engineer, understand my product more. All right. So, there is a lot to explore here, as you can see, right? And there's only so much time, right? So like, where do you start? And where can you look for any kind of inspiration, right? Well, the inspiration is all around you, right? Look at the systems you use. We all use open source projects at work every single day. A lot of open source projects out there are begging for additional maintainers, right? And when open source projects say that newcomers are welcome, they really, really mean it, right? Because those current maintainers, they want to be able to go on vacation, right? They want all those issues resolved, right? And you start small and you work your way through projects. I've seen people start off as simple community maintainers, just organizing forums, and a couple of years later, they're core devs on projects, right? Even fixing simple things in open source projects that been bugging you in a framework you use. Maybe it's just a documentation issue. All right? Most of us here use Linux systems. Linux internal is always a good place to start. Extremely relevant, right? Pretty advanced, easy to get overwhelmed, but it's so broad, you can just pick one thing that I've always been curious about. Sure, everybody here has one thing about Linux or your operating system, Mac OS, Windows, that you're curious about. Like, how does a command execute, right? We all here use containers, but how many of you really know what a container is? That's not so far-fetched, and it's super easy to find this information out, right? Explore it, understand it, right? What are the pros and cons? Like, what do you get from using a container or any of these other technologies? Networking is always a good one, right? I see this one a lot of times. Devs are like, I don't know anything about networking. Engineers are like, I wish I knew more about networking. Well, everything you do involves the network. Why don't you know more? Right? Like, literally, we wouldn't be here without the network. So take the opportunity and explore the network, right? How does a packet get from a computer to your favorite website? Like, when you ping something, what does that even mean? Right? Just dive right in. A good one is also always a new programming paradigm, right? I prefer paradigms over syntax because that's where I come up with new ways of thinking and new ways of solving problems, right? And I explored this one a couple years ago when I decided to learn Erlang, and I met the amazing Joe Armstrong. He was an amazing person, always fun to talk to, always excited about technology, severely misses him, right? But Erlang gave me a new way to think about failure and distributed systems, right? I wasn't really writing a distributed system at that time, right? I was just writing a monolithic Rails app. But just thinking about the way systems fail, right, really informed the way I then communicated to my team about how we build the infrastructure, how they write code, how we handle errors, right? And then functional programming, always cool, always nice, always changes the way you think, right? Other areas to explore, you could learn some theory behind what you're doing, right? Once again, we're all writing systems that serve people. A little bit of queuing theory goes a long way. That's a really great area to explore. As we get into more AI, NML, a little bit of statistics can go a long way too. So lots to explore depending on your area of interest, right? You also have none of the above. Pick something you want to do. Go exploring. But most importantly, your own systems, right? We're always working on features, but how much time do you take to consider what makes your technology tick, right? Like, what are you dependent on? What are the risks? What are the challenges, right? What is the secret sauce of your technology, right? That's really a thing that we all should understand about the systems we operate. And it's a great area for you to engage in some more personal and professional development, right? Expand your team. All right, so how do you do this, right? And as I said, this applies equally both to us as leaders and the people we lead and manage. So, I say you, they, interchangeably, but you can put yourself in any one of those shoes, right? Guidance and direction for your teams, right? Learn about them, right? You want to know who the people you're leading are. Talk to them. Learn their interests. Do they gravitate towards certain types of problem? Ask around. Learn what people need. What are they looking for, right? What's on their wish list of things? As leaders, it's up to us to make the time for this, right? Do it during your dev talk, right? Encourage individuals or yourself to make a learning plan, right? Making a plan, tackling it bit by bit, super important. important to identify periodic learning milestones that you want to accomplish, right? And the timing of those milestones will be individual and team dependent, right? But you should keep it consistent, just make a routine, right? Some companies have 10% times. I don't know if anybody can still afford that, but if you do, take advantage of it. You as a leader, can you make 10% time? Right? Encourage sharing, right? If you can teach it, you've learned it. This talk is coming out of just my explorations and things, right? Lots of my other conference talks, right? Encouraging people to learn, share, goes towards developing their mentoring skills, right? Part of becoming a senior engineer is learning how to learn, but learning how to teach and learning how to mentor. This goes a long way in developing those skills as well. It helps you reinforce what you learn when you share, and it also helps you develop your communication skills. Now, there are pitfalls here, right? The point here is not to build a whole bunch of tiny, shiny things and make your production environment look like a giant cooking experiment, right? It's learning, exploration, gaining knowledge, right? You might hear people say, other leaders in your org, well, if we train them and let them learn all this cool stuff, they're going to leave. We got to get over that, right? Folks are going to leave. They can leave now for lack of learning and growth, or they can leave in 3 years because you, as the awesome manager, gave them a couple hours a week to explore random things, and then they leave and talk about how awesome your company is, and then you get a continual stream of amazing engineers that are interested in learning, growing, and working with you, right? This gives your staff a reason to stay. They're learning things, right? I'm sure some of you here or all of you have left a job because you weren't learning anything, right? And also there's just loyalty to you as a leader and loyalty to your organization. Keep it simple. Don't try to land on the moon or boil the ocean. Expand on something small, familiar. You 100% should go down the rabbit hole, just don't get lost in the maze. That's where your learning plan comes in. And also, time box excursions, right? Set time limits. Use your experience as a leader to help manage the frustrations of your staff if they were to get stuck, right? And always remind them to refer back to their learning plan. And most importantly, just don't. Just don't. It starts off cute, but it ends up real bad, fast. I've been there, just don't. All right. You know, and there are really amazing resources here where you can find out here on the internet. I don't know if any of you follow Julia Evans. She is an amazing person. She is like the ultimate embodiment of exploration, right? Like, go to her website, check out her zines. She has explored everything from top to bottom. A really good example of somebody that really loves to learn and explore, right? Y'all have the internet. Like, wait, did I skip something? Oh yeah, the internet too. Yeah, searching, right. So you have your team, right? Like, use your team, have them talk to each other, learn from each other, right? You can take a class. There are online learning platforms, Coursera, edX, Pluralsight, Udemy. Explore, whatever your interests are, right? Important thing is always learn, always grow, always share, make yourself a better engineer, make yourself a better leader, right? Thank you, and safe travels.